The second element of poetry is sound, and this is really where we think of the poems that you've read throughout elementary school really emphasize this element, but can be kind of misleading because, as we've said, there are 5 of them, and so you're not going to see that every single poem is going to have all 5 of these elements necessarily. All right, so sound. I like to think of sound as the 3 R's: rhyme, rhythm, and repetition. So rhyme is a repetition of similar ending sounds. We listen to the words and they have the same sound at the end. And we can classify them into 2 types of rhyme: internal rhyme and end rhyme. And just like their name, internal is inside. When I think of words rhyming that have internal rhyme, they're all within the same line. End rhyme, we would look at the very ends of the lines and look for some rhyme. And so I'll show you some examples of both internal and end rhyme here in a second. But when we look specifically at end rhyme, that helps us find a rhyme scheme. And a rhyme scheme is a type of pattern that we talked about that might help you find if a poem has a structured form or not. A rhyme scheme is an organized pattern of rhyme by analyzing the last word in each line, by analyzing the end rhyme. So we look at the last word in each line and we give it a category name like A, B, C, or D. And I'll show you how that looks here in a second. The next part of sound is rhythm. And rhythm we all should know very well because we like music. Rhythm, though, if we think of by definition, it's a pattern of stressed and unstressed syllables within a line. And it helps to create a beat when you're speaking. Repetition, the base word in there is repeat, when things repeat. You might have words repeating, you might have a phrase or a line repeating, or you might have a sound that repeats. If the sound repeats at the end of the word, we just call that rhyme. But sometimes we can have a sound repeat at the beginning of a word, and we call that alliteration. Alliteration is the repeating of a beginning consonant sound. Tongue twisters are good examples of alliteration. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, repeating that same P sound. We also have 2 different kinds of repetition called assonance and consonants, but for our purposes we're really going to focus on alliteration. So those are our 3 R's that go with sound. We also have this thing called onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia is sound words like crash, or bang, or ding. They make the sound that the word represents. So here we have a poem: a flea and a fly and a flew were in prison, so what could they do? Said the fly, let us flee, let us fly, said the flea, so they flew through a flaw in the flue. So if we look for some repetition of sound, the first thing that stands out is alliteration. The beginning F sound is repeated in a lot of those words. Flaw, flew. We can also see some end rhyme. And in end rhyme, we said you look at the ends of the lines. So let's see. We've got flew in the first line and do at the end of the second line that rhyme. And then in the third and fourth line, we have 2 different versions of flee, but they have the same ending sound. We can look for a rhyme scheme. We start by labeling the last, or labeling the last word in each line with a letter. And this poem has a rhyme scheme of A, A, B, B, A. Looking at the first word at the end of the line, flew, we label that with the first letter of the alphabet A. When we go to the next word, do, if it rhymes with that first one, we give it the same letter. It's also an A. Flew and do rhyme. We look at the third word, flee, does not rhyme with flew and do, so we give it the next letter of the alphabet, a B. The fourth word is flee. We would go back to our first word. It doesn't rhyme with flew. It rhymes with our third word, flee, so it gets the same letter, a letter B. So far our pattern is A, A, B, B, and then the last one rhymes with the first word again, so we give it a pattern of A. A, B, B, A. That's not an accident. The author intended for that structure to be there, so it has a definite rhyme scheme. And then when we read it, it definitely had a beat when we read it out loud. You could almost tap your foot to it. And so this poem really emphasizes a lot of sound in the poem. An example of internal rhyme. We see flew and through and flew, all in that last line. All within one line have that same repetition sound. Flew, through, and flew all have the same ending sound, but instead of being at the end of a line, they're all within the same line.